Thanks to our affiliate Bay 9 News for that report. And my friend Dr. John Sharp, he's a Harvard psychiatrist and, of course, an author. He joins me now from Boston. How are you, doctor? Good to see you.
Joey, I'm well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. So take us through this story. You know, it appears to me, based on the conduct alone, Dr. Sharp, that you could make a case that, I mean, a mother, the children are, you know, the first love. So how do you lay this out from a psychological perspective, doctor? Is this explainable?
Well, A, as you point out, it's a crime against nature. You know, it's not naturally explainable. And no mother kills their daughter because she mouthed off. You know, in my view, Julie had a mental illness. And I think that was pretty well supported by her husband, Colonel Parker's letters and calls to her doctor. You know, it's terrible that she wasn't able to get the treatment that she needed, or perhaps that she didn't do her part in getting the treatment that she needed. But she was a sick woman. You know, it doesn't take a psychiatrist to see this, but I would certainly support that.
It's so true. And doctor, if I could just ask you, I mean, you mentioned treatment, which is so significant and certainly, you know, much needed. But for someone this far gone, is there a treatment available that can bring them back? I mean, to even potentially prevent something like this? Bipolar disorder, substance abuse, depression. What can treatment do?
Complicated by poor treatment adherence, by a lot of recklessness, you know, by a lot of lack of taking responsibility for herself, all while she was in charge of the care of these minors. It is terrible and very gloomy, but I'm an optimist. Treatment would have worked if she could have been safely contained, and that probably meant residential or inpatient care, and that probably meant longer-term inpatient care than most hospitals typically provide today. So it would have been a real uphill battle, but I think there was a possibility that this all could have been treated with her participation.
And Dr. Sharp, are there steps to treatment like that where you get progressively better, sort of like, you know, physical therapy or something? I mean, it's of the mind. So is there a multiple-step program?
Absolutely.
And what
yes,
might
you know,
that consist of? Is it
Joey,
medication only, Dr. Sharp, or is it something else?
No, the old term for this, which is still apt today, it's not used enough, is psychiatric rehab, psych rehab, rehabilitation. And what that means is there'd be somebody around her to help her do the next right thing in her life. That might just mean going to bed at the right time, staying in bed when she wakes up, getting up and freshening up and having breakfast, taking her meds, going and talking to a counselor about her goals for the day, going to talk about the obstacles to being able to achieve those goals. It's very practical and very pragmatic. That's the kind of treatment that she needed.
Yeah, absolutely, doctor. And I want to get the lawyer's perspective on this. Of course, we have Ebony with us, and we still have Shireen. And, you know, if I could just ask you, Ebony, you know, this is the kind of case where if there's insanity to be pled or if there's insanity to be proven, isn't this the type of case that you look to? This is not someone, it appears to me, Ebony, to be feigning this.
No, I agree, Joey. This almost looks textbook, right? This is something we would have seen in law school. Also with the substance abuse that they're saying possibly could have been going on here. And just look at her physicality, Joey. I mean, she's trembling, she's shaking. She certainly seems to be someone who's not faking it at all and has real questions about her, you know, again, insanity. And of course, legally, this doesn't mean that she's not competent to stand trial. We know that's a different standard.
Yes.
But certainly, you know, some insanity in terms of defense, I think, would be well played here.
And Shireen, is this, you think, for the prosecution, first-degree murder charges, is it something that you think they could lay out pretty effectively? Or do you think, based upon the psychological issues here, that there will be a major hurdle for them to overcome?
The prosecution has a tough road to hoe, but in this case, she went and purchased a gun, waited 3 days, the requisite waiting period, and then went back and picked it up. And that's the gun she used to kill her children. So the prosecution can argue that that was premeditation, the purchasing of the gun.
And you know what? Shireen raises a great point, because that's the issue. You know, when you're really deliberating and you're premeditating, that certainly would be something they're going to point out big time to that jury. Okay. Great work, Dream Team. Dr. Sharp, so good to see you. All right. Been lighting up social media about this story, and many of you have said a number of things, and I just want to ask the Dream Team about this. Doctor, I have to start with you. I mean, these emails are very telling as to someone's mental status and state of affairs. What does it reveal to you as to her psyche, as to the family's relationship, as to the preventability of this? So many questions that need to be answered.
Parker knew what was going on, but he was getting used to it. It wasn't normal for him, or even, the new normal, as people say. He knew she was sick and she needed help. But looking back, it was impossible for him to have known that she had gotten a gun and it was so premeditated. It was just a question of 72 hours before she was going to kill their kids. It's so terrible. When you see this in a family, you want to advise them, don't wait. Don't assume it's going to be okay. Get her to the hospital. Get more involved sooner rather than later. That's the moral of the story, and he tried. God knows he tried.
Dr. Sharp, so tragic. And I want to go to both Ebony and Shireen, but for different reasons. I want to get Ebony's perspective on how potentially the prosecution will spin the emails. And then, of course, I want to ask Shireen how the defense, how they might use it to their advantage, because this is coming. So, Ebony, you heard these emails. They're chilling, to say the least.
Sure.
I mean, how do you think this will be spun to the advantage of the prosecution?
Well, Joy, one thing the prosecution is probably going to hone in on is in that email to her husband where she talks about her own mental state. She kind of acknowledges that she's mentally disturbed. Prosecutors might take that as an indication that is this somehow her, kind of setting up a defense ahead of time. They're going to kind of play that to the jury. Exactly.
That's a great point. And Shireen, how do you defend against that? I mean, there's always two sides of a story, of course, and the defense is going to spin it another way to establish that there's some mental disease or defect here. So how do you see that playing out, Shireen?
Well, these emails are in line with her behavior. After she killed her children, she didn't try to hide. She was found sitting in her robe that was all bloody by the pool. I mean, obviously, this woman was out of her mind, is what the defense is going to say. And the emails back that up. She was still talking about her children being alive after she had killed them.
Absolutely. And, Doctor, you see her shaking there. I mean, if, from a court perspective, you go into a courtroom, you testify as an expert witness, what do you say from a prosecution's perspective to establish that this was premeditated and that she was lucid and not mentally ill?
Well, you can say that she definitely was disturbed, but that wasn't interfering with her ability to know what she was doing. She, I think, got the gun. She scribbled something about this delays the massacre, didn't she? I mean, it's very clear that despite her intoxication, her appearance, her inability to function, that she was doing something deliberately. I think that, she was both mentally ill and functioning in a deliberate way, even though she was quite crazed, loosely speaking, at and after the moment of killing.
What a dichotomy, Doctor. She's crazed, but she knows what she's doing. It's a conundrum. Well, obviously, social media has been lighting up about this story, and here's what some of you have had to say about it.
We have Dr. Sharp with us, yes? Dr. Sharp, let me ask you.
Yes.
Was there anything about this trial that you think the battered child syndrome should have been included as a defense, or no?
No, I think it's correct that it was not included for a variety of reasons. It's a non-specific thing. You think battered child syndrome points in one direction. It really doesn't. It came from pediatrics, actually, when parents would sometimes shake their infants and cause skull damage, physical injuries for babies. As a younger person witnessing violence at home, of course there's going to be some reaction. Maybe he was a hurt person, and like we say, hurt people hurt people. But it didn't make him into a ticking time bomb. It wasn't the cause of him taking that gun and shooting his dad.
But that's the problem, though, Doctor, is that's really a jury question. And I mean, I think his issue on appeal, Christy and Dr. Sharp, is that he should have at least been able to put that before a jury for them to make the determination as to whether it had anything to do with his actions.
To let the jury decide.
Well, that could be, Joey.
Yeah.
You're the legal expert. But psychiatrically, I think it's irrelevant, actually.
Alrighty.
Legally, maybe it should have been, part of the discussion.
The doctor
that's what
says
I
it's
think
irrelevant, it's irrelevant.
All righty, if you're a fan of Forensic Files, tune in every day at 1 Eastern right here.